All right, everyone get ready because today we are diving headfirst into some pretty mind-bending stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring The Call, a collection of writings that kind of shake up how we usually think about Islamic faith and spirituality.
Right.
It's written like a journal, entries over years, each one tackling all kinds of topics.
Mm.
Everything from intercession to the role of women in Islam to, get this, the nature of space itself.
It's really fascinating, how the call pushes us to question, like really question what we think we know.
Yeah.
And to go deeper than just surface level. It really makes you wrestle with the core of Islamic teachings.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't hold back. Right from the beginning, it throws out this concept of hidden duality. This idea that a lot of us, maybe without even realizing it,
Right.
we see Allah as a separate God, like a deity God, instead of recognizing Allah's reality like within us, within our very being. Have you ever felt that kind of disconnect? Like your spiritual beliefs are on one side and your daily life's on a totally different planet. The Call says that could be a sign of this hidden duality thing.
And that duality has huge implications. The text argues that it actually blocks us from really experiencing intercession.
Oh, wow.
That divine support we all look for, Without it, we're at risk of facing that hellfire of suffering, both in this life and the next. Pretty stark warning.
Yeah.
That makes you wonder, are we really believing in Allah?
Right.
Or just some idea of God that we've inherited?
It's like, are we really living our faith or just kind of like, I don't know, saying the words? It really makes you think. And then the Call goes on to talk about how we're always being veiled from reality, not by some outside force or anything, but by our own past, like all our conditioning and judgments. It uses this crazy metaphor. It says our brain needs to be refreshed, like formatted even, to really see things in a new way.
Wow.
Think about a time you had a really strong negative reaction to something. Was it really about that situation itself, or were you seeing it through, like, I don't know, all the stuff from your past, all those hurts and biases?
That's exactly it. The Call is getting at that. How it's like we're walking around with these outdated filters that block us from the full experience of what's right there in front of us.
Right. And it's not just about our own personal experiences either. The Call challenges how we understand religious practices, saying it's not about just blindly following rules, but about understanding the why behind them, like the deeper purpose.
The meaning.
Yeah. For example, it talks about the concept of salat, prayer, but not as worshiping some deity god out there somewhere.
Okay.
It frames it as turning inward, a way to experience the reality of Allah, like inside ourselves.
That's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
Like, are we just going through the motions, or are we connecting with the deeper meaning and benefit of salat? Do we really get why we're doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in rituals and stuff without really understanding what they mean,
Definitely.
And along those lines, the Call also separates just having knowledge about faith from actually experiencing faith. Real inner peace, it says, comes from living that faith, not just knowing about it.
It's not just head knowledge.
Yeah.
The text uses this powerful metaphor, a donkey carrying books.
Oh, wow.
The donkey might be loaded down with all this knowledge, but it doesn't mean it understands or benefits from it,
Right.
So it makes you ask, is our faith a source of real contentment like acceptance? Or are we still carrying around anxiety and complaints?
Yeah, like can we walk the walk, not just talk the talk?
Exactly.
Now, speaking of walking the walk, the Call also talks about how we approach sacred texts, like the Quran.
Right.
It says just reciting it in Arabic or even reading a translation isn't enough. It's about getting the spirit of the message, the real meaning behind the words.
Yeah. And that ties in directly with its view on women in Islam. It suggests the Quran set like minimum standards for women's rights, standards that can and should grow as society moves forward. It's about evolving, not being stuck.
So we shouldn't see the Quran as this unchanging document.
Right.
It's more like a living guide.
Exactly.
That's a pretty interesting take, right?
Yeah.
It really makes us think about how we approach these sacred texts.
Yeah.
Do we see them as fixed or as something that can evolve?
That's a key question.
Yeah.
But for now, let's move on to something even more mind-blowing, the author's perspective on space. The Call throws out this idea of space as empty,
Okay.
and instead says it's a conscious living thing that includes both heaven and hell.
Wait, hold on. Space is alive. That's wild. I always thought of it as like
Yeah.
cold and empty.
Yeah, yeah.
How does the call even explain that?
Well, it describes space as the fifth element.
Okay.
And it connects this conscious space directly to our role as what it calls vicegerents on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It says we have this responsibility to actually experience and express our own, like, inherent divinity. We're, like, mirroring those divine qualities within this conscious universe.
So it's not just about, like, personal enlightenment. It's about bringing those qualities out into the world. That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
If space really is this conscious being, it really makes you wonder about where we fit in the universe.
Right.
Like, what's the point of our existence in this grand scheme of things?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
And that's just scratching the surface. The call also cautions us about the limits of what we can understand as humans.
Oh, okay.
Warns against getting trapped in these imitative behaviors that are all driven by ego.
Mm-hmm.
It introduces this idea of a divine scheme,
Right.
where people might think they're on the right path,
Right.
but they're actually being led astray by their own unchecked desires and negative influences.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap? How do we even know what our blind spots are, where we might be deceiving ourselves? The call really gives us a lot to think about.
It does. And
Yeah.
on that note, let's shift gears a bit and look at how the call describes love. It contrasts real love with just liking something.
Okay.
And highlights how powerful selfless devotion is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just romantic love.
Yeah.
It's a much deeper level of seeing and connecting that's tied to what I call spiritual sight.
That's where it gets really interesting for me. The text says that how we see reality, both inside and outside, is shaped by the information we take in and by how conscious we've become.
Right.
It's about developing that inner vision to see beyond the surface.
Exactly. And the call even goes into this really captivating concept of inner space, a realm of pure consciousness where people who experience ascension actually ascend. It's described as like the place of oneness and unity, the ultimate goal of all this spiritual practice.
But what exactly is inner space? Is it a physical place? A state of mind? It's like the text is asking us to redefine what reality even is.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It makes us think outside our usual categories. The call doesn't give a simple answer,
Right.
but it invites us to consider that what we think of as inner is actually inseparable from outer. It's more about how we're seeing things, not necessarily a change in reality itself.
Whoa, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Makes you question everything you thought you knew.
It does.
And just when you think it can't get any deeper, the call challenges our whole idea of time.
Correct.
Especially the idea of after, like in the context of death and the afterlife.
Yeah.
It says we're always living in this after state, putting off real fulfillment until some future moment that we imagine. But in reality, the only reality is now.
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
We always get caught up in chasing after things, thinking happiness is somewhere in the future.
Yeah.
But the call is telling us to embrace the present moment because that's all we really have.
So how do we break free from that after thinking? How do we really live in the now and live a life of real meaning and purpose?
Well, the text offers some practical guidance for how to navigate this life and prepare for the next.
Okay.
It says focus on gaining knowledge and using its principles, living in harmony with the way the universe works. It's about aligning with that divine flow, not fighting against it.
It's like a call to action to get out of the waiting room of life and start actually living. And speaking of stepping out, the call introduces this powerful metaphor of the cocoon, that limited world we build around ourselves, filled with cookie idols, which are those false gods and attachments that we cling to because they make us feel safe and comfortable.
It's such a vivid image.
Yeah.
Really makes you think about, what are your cookie idols? What am I unknowingly worshiping? What would it be like to break free and experience the real vastness and wonder of the world?
It's a call to face our fears,
Yeah.
to challenge what we're attached to and embrace the unknown. And the call acknowledges that can be hard, even painful sometimes.
Absolutely. But facing those hard truths can be so freeing. It allows us to move beyond fooling ourselves and line ourselves up with a bigger purpose.
Yeah, the text even shares this powerful story about the Pharaoh. Even with all his knowledge and power, he ended up trapped by his ego.
Right.
And ultimately he perished.
Yeah.
It's a powerful symbol of the limits of what the call calls the inspired self. So it reminds us that even when we have knowledge, we can still get caught by our ego.
Right.
We need humility on this path. Right. But how do we even know if we're on the right path? How do we avoid making the same mistakes as the Pharaoh?
Well, the call emphasizes that we always have a choice.
Okay.
We can choose to live in ignorance, clinging to our cookie idols, and face what comes with that. Or we can embrace the knowledge that's been shown to us and really try to live by those principles. It's a call to be awake in our lives, to make choices on purpose.
We're not just passengers. We're active in creating our own reality. And speaking of creation, the call warns us about getting caught up in arguments and conflicts, even among people who say they're following a spiritual path. It reminds us of that hadith about the companions of the Rasul, peace be upon him, who were turned away from the pool of Kauthar because they didn't truly follow his way.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
It is, right. It reminds us that really living the spirit of Islam, living in line with the Prophet's teachings, peace be upon him, is so much more than just doing the outward stuff.
Right.
It's about walking the walk.
Absolutely.
And on that note, the call brings up this interesting concept of the nouveau riche, not just about money, but about spiritual knowledge, too.
It warns against becoming nouveau Sufis.
Okay.
Gaining knowledge without the interchange to go with it.
Ouch. It's like having a whole library of books, but never actually opening them.
Exactly.
It's easy to think that knowing stuff is enough.
Yeah.
But real spiritual growth needs more than just our heads, right?
Yeah.
It has to show up in our actions, how we treat people, our whole way of being.
Right. Aligning our inner and outer worlds. Walking the walk.
And on that note, I think it's time we look closer at the author's own story. What led them to write The Call in the first place? What did they learn on their journey?
Let's dive into that next. It's a really interesting story. So The Call actually starts with the author's own story.
Okay.
Their journey of becoming Muslim and then really diving deep into spiritual exploration. It highlights how powerful encountering the teachings of the Rasul, peace be upon him, was.
Right.
But also how important it is to keep questioning and searching for deeper understanding.
So it's not about just blindly accepting things.
Yeah.
It's about engaging with the teachings, letting them challenge us, change us, right? Sounds like the author had a lot of those aha moments.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is how the author stresses that the journey of faith never really ends.
Yeah.
It's not about reaching some final destination. It's about constant effort, being vigilant,
Right.
continuously refining what we understand and making sure our actions line up with our beliefs.
That makes sense to me. Like, how do we make sure our faith isn't just something theoretical? How do we actually live it? It sounds like The Call offers some guidance on that.
It definitely does. One of the key ways is by highlighting the importance of sacrifice and purification on the spiritual path.
Okay.
And this isn't about material things. It's about letting go of attachments,
Right.
the things we cling to for comfort and security, and refining our inner selves.
That makes me think of that metaphor in the text about gold being purified in fire.
Yeah.
It takes intense heat to burn away the impurities and reveal the true beauty underneath. It's a strong image, isn't it?
It is. And The Call suggests that this purifying process often involves facing tough challenges
Right.
and overcoming those desires that come from our ego that hold us back. It kind of asks us, what might you need to sacrifice? What do you need to let go of to truly move forward on your spiritual path?
It's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is.
Makes you face the things you might be holding on to that are actually blocking your growth. But The Call seems to be saying that facing those challenges is exactly what leads to real transformation.
Absolutely. And it's not just about personal transformation either.
Oh.
The text also critiques blind imitation, especially when it comes to religious practices.
Right.
It cautions against just copying outward forms without getting their deeper meaning. It's about the heart of it.
Yeah.
Connecting to the spirit,
Yeah.
not just mimicking.
I remember that section where it talks about reciting the Quran in Arabic or even just reading a translation. It argues that's not the same as really reading it,
Right.
which is about understanding the spirit of the message.
That's not just the words. It's about the context,
Right.
the deeper layers of meaning, and how those principles apply to our lives. The Quran's not meant to be a relic. It's a living source of guidance.
And this focus on the spirit of the Quran is really clear in how the text talks about women in Islam.
Yeah.
It says that the Quran set these minimum levels for rights.
Right, like thresholds.
Yeah, thresholds that should expand as society grows.
It's about realizing the timeless principles of the Quran, but applying them in a way that honors progress and justice.
So it's about moving forward, not staying stuck.
Exactly.
And speaking of moving forward, The Call has this really interesting idea about space.
Yeah. It completely flips the script on how we normally think of space as this cold, empty void.
Right.
Instead, it says it's a conscious, living entity. It even suggests that space is where both heaven and hell exist.
I know, it's pretty mind-blowing.
Right. It's so different from how we usually picture space.
It is.
But this idea of a conscious universe actually lines up with a lot of spiritual traditions that focus on how interconnected we are with all of creation.
It reminds us that we're not just individuals floating around in some random universe.
Right.
We're part of something much bigger,
Yeah.
something that's alive and aware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the call connects this concept of space directly to our role as vicegerents on Earth.
Okay.
It suggests that we have a duty to express our own inherent divinity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're mirroring those divine qualities within this conscious universe.
So it's not just about our own enlightenment, it's about bringing those qualities into the world.
Right.
That's a pretty big responsibility.
It is, and it goes back to one of the main themes we've been talking about.
Okay.
The importance of not just knowing spiritual truths, but actually living them.
Right.
The call really drives this point home when it critiques those who become nouveau Sufis,
Mm-hmm.
accumulating knowledge without the interchange to back it up.
Makes me think of that donkey carrying books metaphor again.
Yeah.
You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if it doesn't actually change how you live, how you treat others, how you find peace within yourself,
Right.
what's it all for?
It's about walking the walk.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another key theme in the call,
Okay.
understanding the purpose behind religious practices.
Right. Not just blindly following them.
Exactly. It's about conscious participation.
So it's about using our minds and hearts,
Yeah.
not just going through the motion.
This idea really comes through in how the text talks about salat, prayer.
Okay.
It describes salat not as worshiping a deity god somewhere else,
Mm-hmm.
but as a way of turning inward to experience the reality of Allah within ourselves.
It's like shifting the focus
Yeah.
from outer rituals to an inner experience of connecting with the divine inside us.
It's about tapping into that source of peace, guidance, and wisdom that's always there for us.
And the call takes it even further by distinguishing between simply having knowledge of faith versus actually experiencing faith.
Right. It argues that true inner peace comes from embodying faith, not just intellectually understanding it.
That reminds me of the image it uses, the donkey carrying a load of books.
Yeah.
The donkey might be loaded with knowledge,
Right.
but it doesn't mean it gets it or benefits from it.
So the call asks us to think,
Yeah.
is our faith a source of true contentment and acceptance? Or are we still weighed down by worry and complaints?
It's a challenge to look at ourselves, honestly.
it is.
It's about asking those tough questions.
No.
Am I really living my faith or just saying the words? Am I walking the walk or just talking the talk? And honestly, sometimes the answer can be a little uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And that's where the call pushes us to identify those cookie idols in our lives, those false gods and attachments that we cling to because they make us feel comfortable and secure.
Yeah.
It encourages us to find the courage to let go of those things and really break free.
To step outside our comfort zones, face our fears, and embrace the possibilities that open up when we release those limitations.
Exactly.
And the call says that process of letting go, of purification, is at the center of the spiritual path.
It's not about deprivation.
Right.
It's about creating space for what really matters.
It's like that metaphor it uses. Gold being purified in fire
Yeah.
takes intense heat to burn away the impurities and show the true brilliance underneath.
The call seems to be saying that this process of purification isn't always easy. It often means facing tough challenges and pushing through pain to reach a deeper understanding.
And the text uses the story of the Pharaoh as a warning.
Yeah.
Right?
He had all that knowledge and
Yeah.
power,
Mm-hmm.
but he was a slave to his ego.
Right.
And in the end, he was destroyed.
It's a stark reminder.
Mm.
Even with knowledge, we can still fall prey to the limitations of what the call calls the inspired self. So it's a warning about the dangers of ego and the need for humility on this path.
Absolutely. But how do we know if we're really on the right path? How do we avoid those same traps?
That's where the call gets really interesting. It talks about how limited human understanding is, reminding us that what we know is always partial, always evolving. It's about humility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Right.
It makes me think about times I've held on to a certain way of thinking, only to realize later that I needed to let go and be open to new insights.
Absolutely. The call cautions against getting too attached to fixed interpretations,
Yeah.
which can lead to dogma and division. It's about staying open to new perspectives, accepting that we might be wrong.
It's about having the courage to question, to explore, and to let our understanding grow.
And it's also about recognizing the power of what the text calls the divine scheme,
Okay.
the way events unfold according to a larger plan that we might not fully grasp. It's a reminder to trust the process, even when things don't make sense to our limited understanding.
It's about surrendering to the mystery, to the unknown.
Yeah.
And speaking of mystery, the call also explores its fascinating concept of spiritual sight.
It's about developing our inner vision,
Right.
that ability to see beyond the surface and perceive the deeper meaning and how everything's connected.
The text connects the spiritual sight directly to love.
Right. The call talks about the difference between real love and just liking something. It shows how transformative selfless devotion can be.
And it's not just talking about romantic love.
No, it's a force that can uplift us, inspire us, connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
And the call links this love back to that idea of inner space.
Yeah, that realm of pure consciousness.
It keeps coming up. What exactly is it?
It's a good question. And the call doesn't give a simple answer.
Right.
It encourages us to expand how we understand reality beyond our usual categories. It suggests that what we think of as inner is really not separate from the outer. It's more about how we're seeing things,
Okay.
not necessarily a change in what reality is.
So it's about shifting our perspective, recognizing that interconnectedness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it challenges us to consider that maybe real spiritual growth isn't about escaping the world, but about changing how we relate to it.
Seeing the divine in everything, every moment, every interaction. And that brings us to the call's insights on time and the idea of after, especially when we're talking about death and the afterlife.
Right.
It argues that we often put off true fulfillment, clinging to this idea of after,
Yeah.
when the only moment we truly have is now.
Like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Stop putting off living. Stop waiting for something in the future to make you happy.
Realizing that true joy and meaning are right here, right now.
Exactly. And the call challenges us to think about what it would mean to live as if each moment were our last,
Wow.
with gratitude, intention, and love.
That's a powerful way to look at life. Makes you really appreciate how precious each moment is. It really makes you think about how often we get stuck in that someday thinking,
Yeah.
always looking ahead instead of appreciating what we have right here, right now.
The call brings us back to the importance of knowledge and action. It says just knowing spiritual truths isn't enough. We have to actually put them into practice.
Right, like closing that gap between thinking and doing.
Yeah, it's like looking at a beautiful path from afar.
Right.
Versus actually walking it, hitting the bumps, and experiencing it firsthand.
And the call says that this path often takes work,
Yeah.
discipline, and a willingness to look at our limits.
But it also says the rewards are so worth it.
Makes me think about freedom. Not freedom from responsibility or challenges, but freedom from the limits of our ego. Freedom from ignorance,
Right.
from the suffering that comes with feeling disconnected from who we really are.
It's about waking up to that reality.
Yeah.
Who we truly are, expressions of the divine, capable of amazing joy, love, and connection. The call reminds us that this potential is already inside us, waiting to be unlocked.
Yeah, it's a call to step into our power,
Yeah.
to embrace this journey of growth, and to contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
To the evolution of consciousness itself.
That's powerful, isn't it?
It is. It reminds us that we're not just watching this grand cosmic play. We're active participants, co-creating our reality in the world around us.
And that brings us to another interesting part of the call, how it explores the connection between the individual and everyone else. It warns us about becoming isolated in our own little cocoons, holding on to our cookie idols and forgetting that we're all connected. Have you ever felt that pull to retreat? Like, build walls around yourself?
Definitely.
The call is pushing us to break free from that.
It's a call to step outside those self-made boundaries.
Yeah.
To engage with the world in a real, meaningful way.
Right. It's like a reminder that our personal journey is always linked to the collective journey.
We rise and fall together.
Makes you think about how your actions, choices, even your thoughts affect the world around you.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And it challenges us to ask how we can act in ways that bring more harmony, justice, and compassion.
It's about becoming conscious creators, not just passive consumers.
Right.
Realizing that true spiritual growth isn't a solo mission, it's a collective awakening.
It's a beautiful vision, isn't it? And it speaks to one of the main messages in the call that we always have a choice.
Right.
We can hold on to our limited, ego-driven views,
Right.
or we can embrace a bigger, interconnected reality.
It's about choosing love over fear,
Yeah.
connection over isolation, and ultimately, truth over illusion. It's a strong reminder that we're not just victims of our circumstances. We have the power to shape our reality
Yeah.
and help create a more just and compassionate world.
But the call doesn't try to make things seem easier than they are.
Right.
It acknowledges that this path of awakening can be hard, even painful. And it warns us about getting caught up in spiritual materialism, like getting attached to our spiritual experiences or thinking we're enlightened.
Right.
It calls out those who might become nouveau Sufis, gaining knowledge and experiences without the real interchange to support it.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. Real spiritual growth isn't about collecting status or powers.
Right.
It's about growing in humility, compassion, and understanding how deeply we're all connected.
Recognizing we're all works in progress, always learning and growing.
And the call stresses how important it is to find real teachers and mentors who can guide us on this path, helping us navigate the challenges.
It's about looking for wisdom from those who've been there, learning from what they've been through and what they've learned.
But it's also about being smart, right? Knowing the difference between real guidance and someone who's just interested in power or building themselves up.
That's so important. We have to be careful about who we choose as our teachers.
And at the end of the day, the call reminds us that the best teacher is already within us.
Right.
It's about connecting with that inner source of wisdom and guidance, the spark of the divine that lights our way.
So the call points us back to ourselves, to that realization that we already have everything we need for this journey of awakening.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our own inherent divinity, our capacity for love, compassion, and wisdom, and remembering that we're not alone on this path. We're all connected, part of this incredible web of life.
This has been an amazing exploration of the call. It's given us so much to think about how we see ourselves, our relationship with the divine, and our place in the world.
It's definitely one of those books that stays with you. It challenges you to look at your assumptions, to go deeper in your understanding of Islamic faith and spirituality, and to really step into your potential.
It's a call to wake up to who we truly are, to connect with the divine within, and to help create a more just, compassionate, and harmonious world.
It's a journey worth taking.
Yeah.
A journey that can lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves, our relationship with the divine, and our place in the grand scheme of things.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the call. We hope these insights inspire your own journey of spiritual growth and discovery.
May we all keep seeking knowledge, embody wisdom, and live in a way that honors the dignity and potential of every being.
Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.